I'm Robin Miller Brecker.
And I'm Karen Lenzer. Welcome to Seeking Center, the podcast.
Join us each week as we have the conversations and weed through the spiritual and holistic clutter for you. We'll boil it down to what you need to know now.
We're all about total wellness, which to us means building a healthy life on a physical, mental, and spiritual level. We'll talk to the trailblazers who will introduce you to the practices, products, and experiences that may be just what you need to hear about to transform your life.
If you're listening to this, it's no accident. Think of this as your seeking center and your place to seek your center. And for even more mega inspo, sign up for Seeking Center, the newsletter at seekingcenter.app. In this episode of Seeking Center, we're diving into the world of psychedelics and plant medicine. Think of this as Psychedelics 101. There is so much to learn and explore in this world. So in the future, we'll explore each of these plant medicines in more depth. But for this episode, with the wisdom and guidance of Torrie Nelson, an integration specialist in the healing and transformation world, we'll discuss the basics of each of the major psychedelics and plants. What are they? How can they potentially help you? How do they work? What could an intentional journey look like? What does integration mean? How does that work? We'll be discussing all of it. In addition, Torrie shares her own journey into this world, which may serve as an aha for you. For those of you even a little bit curious about the power of plant medicine, this episode is for you. Let's get started. Torrie, we're going to start really basic. What are psychedelics?
Psychedelics are powerful psychoactive substances that alter perception and mood and affect numerous cognitive processes. So targeting identified key areas in the brain, putting you in expanded states of consciousness and various states of consciousness. The word psychedelic is actually derived from the Greek origin. So psyche means soul or mind, where delion or delos means to manifest. So the psychedelic word essentially means mind manifesting or soul manifesting.
How did I not know that?
I think the things people have such perception of what they think psychedelics are versus really getting down to the basics of how you just explained it. And this idea of your mind being able to manifest, of giving it this power that people may not even realize that they have with the assistance of this medicine, I think is what is piquing a lot of interest now with people. How did you start, Torrie? How did you get involved with psychedelics yourself?
Oh, that's a big story. I really started my journey when I was around 20 years old, is the recreational aspect to it. So at that point, I didn't really understand intention or set and setting or who you're sharing those experiences with. At 20 years old, my friend, she wanted to try psilocybin magic mushrooms for the first time for her 21st birthday. So that was really my first exposure to any psychedelic. And through that experience, nor did I understand that intention or that set and setting or who you're sharing that experience with and how much that can actually impact your experience itself. And so there was recreational use and curiosity, but really in 2017, the partner that I had at the time, we started having interest into the psychedelic space, reading books, listening to podcasts, reading articles, and understanding how they are assisting with depression, PTSD, anxiety. And we've started to read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan or Awareness by Anthony DeMello, The Untethered Soul, The Journey Beyond Yourself by Michael Singer. And I really have to give some context into my partner at the time because he was extremely influential into that space. So in 2017, when we met and started really diving into this space, he was a person whose childhood, he grew up in impoverished areas of Akron, Ohio, living in and out of government housing, food pantries, living with a single mother. He later in adult life turned into a special ops EOD bomb tech in the military and started doing tours in Iraq. And then when he got out, he became an entrepreneur. So this is a man who was extremely driven, a man who was extremely determined, and a man who also had an extremely hard shell. And he was a very type A man. And so through all of this curiosity, his anxiety and his depression and his PTSD, we started to gain curiosity, and opportunity started to present itself in 2018, where we had a friend approach us and he said that there was a 2-day cabin psychedelic retreat that was happening in Ohio. And my partner at the time decided that he was going to attend, that he wanted to experience this this after all of the information and readings and all of the education we had received. And I wasn't quite sure what to expect when he left for that experience. And when he came back, he was just so raw and vulnerable and soft. And as soon as he walked into the house, he dropped his bags, and it almost makes me tear up thinking about it again and reliving that experience. He fell into my lap and he just started weeping. And I got to see a version of him that I didn't even know existed. And I looked at him and said, wow, if this has the potential to create an impact with you, I have to try this. I have so much curiosity. And so April of 2018, we made arrangements and participated in my first intentional deep dive psychedelic journey. And that completely changed my life forever. I got to see myself for the first time. I got to go deep into my own mind. And I didn't realize at the time how much I had not thought about me, how much I wasn't honoring myself or the life that I have, or sharing appreciation for any of it. I got to go in that experience, because everything is happening behind an eye mask at that point. And so there's no external input that is imprinting on your experience. Everything is happening within. And seeing myself for the first time, I got to hold me, I got to say hi to me, I got to see the words that I was using against myself and that weren't really in alignment or helpful. And I got to also go back in and really see my mother and go through the different dynamics of our relationship up until that point. I was at 27 at this time, and acknowledged the conversations, the experiences that we've had throughout childhood. And I actually got to see her for the first time. And I didn't know any of this. So the medicine was really gifting me the ability to see her life and who she was and why she was the way that she was. She was one of 6 in her household. My grandfather only made $6,000 a year. My grandmother didn't work. She didn't have indoor plumbing until she was a junior in high school. So I got to go in and acknowledge all of these parts and pieces of her character, of her personality, and go, wow, okay, this makes sense. So I got to have this immense reverence and immense understanding of who she is and why she is the way she is, and the beautiful mother that she is, and the ways in which she thinks and the ways in which she reacts. So I actually got to have experiences with my grandmother in that space too. Her passing was extremely difficult for me. So I actually got to see my grandmother and hold her, which was really beautiful. I also got to receive information on insights into my current relationship. And so that experience changed my life completely. Forever. And since that moment, I just started diving deeper and deeper into that space, creating my own intentional spaces and exploring with various psychedelics and their healing properties, which ultimately led me to the grandmother of plant medicines, ayahuasca. So starting my journey experience in 2018, and then 2 years later in 2020, I got to experience her medicine for the first time, which opened my eyes to so much more that was deeper within my psyche or in what we were all a part of in existence. And so throughout the 4 years of this exploration of self and of God, we didn't know many others who were diving into the space. We literally had to learn what integration was. We had to teach ourselves and learn and unlearn without guidance outside of each other, outside of the resources we were finding that were useful and helpful in understanding some of these expanded conscious experience and healing, which ultimately was extremely challenging to navigate, because in that space, you're diving deep into the basement of your subconscious. You're reliving traumatic experiences that your ego protected you from remembering because they were so painful. You're seeing parts of yourself that you didn't know existed. You are experiencing the true essence of God for the first time. And so everything in which you thought to be true, you start to question in your day-to-day life. And so these psychedelics, they create non-ordinary states of consciousness. So they can give you a clearer or crisper vision of what you haven't seen. There's like the classic, the wall is melting, or the classic experiences of the pink elephant that is seen to you from across the room. You can also relive and revisit past memories. So like I just did with my grandmother, you can also become the 7-year-old self playing on the beach with your family member or speaking to a loved one that has passed. There's extreme expanded spiritual qualities that inhabit in these medicine journey spaces, and they increase your vulnerability. They increase your suggestibility and ability to ask questions and to be curious, really amplifying the change of internal or external sensory from a heightened sense of awareness, becoming more sensitive, losing the sense of a body part or physical self, seeing geometric shapes or colors. If in nature you can see the grass breathing or the bark of the tree changing shape and form, you can be in these spaces and look in your reflection in the mirror and witness your face changing from a young self into an elder self, or even becoming a different person entirely. There's an expanded awareness and emotional range. So within a 4 to 6 hour period of this experience using these plant medicines, you can experience an entire range of emotional states: fear, acceptance, anger, love, pain, forgiveness, clarity, sorrow, all of it. And sometimes you're experiencing those emotions individually, but sometimes you're experiencing it simultaneously and all at once. And they're changing the meaning and perception of your reality and giving us the ability to have an entirely new perspective on an event or memory in our lives and our emotional state around it. And you could also have what's called synesthesia, which is really amazing, which is the act of tasting colors or hearing numbers. Could become a grain of the wood of the tree or a music note being played. And you're just in the space like, whoa, what is happening? I can't believe that I'm actually getting to experience. So you actually become very cognizant and aware of your experience, and you can notice the self and the higher self that exists within that same space. And so you're able to ask questions. You're able to see yourself as the Torrie, and then also as the highest version of Torrie, who is able to taste colors and hear numbers. And there's also physical symptoms that can come from them that are influenced by mind and emotion. So in that space, you can have trauma releases, so panic attacks, nausea, pain. If you're experiencing back pain, I've had the medicine go in and the guides within those spaces rewire my entire synaptic connection when I hurt my back. And so coming out of that space, my back pain had decreased substantially. You can have rapidly, persistently reduced symptoms of several psychedelic or psychiatric illnesses. And so through this process is when I really started taking an interest in learning about meditation and somatic work and breath work and the central nervous system, dopamine and serotonin, what trauma is, the patterns of our thoughts, the patterns of our behaviors. I just dove really deep into that space, learning and educating and gaining wisdom through the experience of my own personal experience. And through this accumulated knowledge, I slowly started working with people to assist them in understanding their experiences, providing a safe space for them to try to conceptualize or not conceptualize the experience itself, because it can be extremely difficult, guiding them through their integration process and introducing various modalities to assist in creating a deep relationship to our mind and our body.
Torrie, that is quite the journey. And oh my goodness,
So many questions.
there's so many questions. One question I want to ask, it's a little more detail oriented, but for everybody listening, when you started in that first life-changing, intentional experience that you had in 2018, was that with psilocybin?
No, that was with a combination. So the medicine keeper that we went to, he worked with various other medicine keepers and started to create different compounds that would reveal specific experiences. So when you're working with somebody of trauma who has severe PTSD, say they did a tour in Iraq and they watched their platoon be bombed, using something like MDMA or MDA, you're able to go into that space with a lot more open-heartedness and slide into that space in a more softer and gentle way. Because if you're using something as potent as psilocybin or LSD, or even jumping into an ayahuasca ceremony where you don't have the foundational skill set that is built, then it can, in a lot of this PTSD or past traumas surface, and you don't have the skill set to really navigate that in that space, or even the skill set or the foundation to integrate that afterwards, it can be re-traumatizing. And so the man that I worked with, every person that would come in for their very first deep dive journey experience, he would introduce a protocol, which was MDMA, MDA, and intramuscular ketamine. And so it was a 5 to 6 hour experience that was completely behind an eye mask the entire time, linked to a playlist. And so the playlist is what really guides you through that experience. Now you can keep the eye mask on, or you can take it off depending on your comfortability or where you're at. And if you do take it off, it's like changing the channel a little bit. So if you get stuck in a really deep space space in which you're not really comfortable in. You can always take the eye mask off and blink the eyes a few times, and it really changes the channel. So you actually have so much control in that space, and you can go as deep as you allow yourself to go. So you're really creating this incredible relationship, not just with the medicines, but with the self. And how much are you willing to see it? How far and deep are you willing to go? And so that first experience in 2018 was that specific, I'm going to call it a heart protocol, because it was extremely soft and gentle. And I got to just experience the reverence of love and the essence of love and what that really felt like in my body, because I had never experienced that before. I just remember sobbing, and I was just sitting there and I was holding myself so tightly. And I was just, hi, me. Oh my goodness. I love you, me. Where have you always been? I have no idea where you went. And so in that experience, using that protocol, I'm so glad that I did, because I took so much away from that. And it was so beneficial, because I think that if I would have dove into something maybe a little bit more grander of a medicine experience or deeper of a medicine experience, I wouldn't really know how to navigate it.
Well, I'm so grateful we're having this conversation, because I think there's so many people who have heard elements of what we're talking about, but they haven't really heard the whole picture and what to consider when, or what kind of experience different psychedelics will most likely give you. And this importance, which we're going to also continue to talk about, which is integration, and making sure that if you choose to have one of these experiences, that you're doing it in a very safe setting.
Before we go there, Torrie, how does it differ from a drug versus, you call psychedelics medicine versus a drug? And I think in my mind, I always thought of a psychedelic as an actual drug, taking this to really get your mind to a place where it's escaping, versus what it sounds like you're doing with your protocol and the way it's approached. It's really intentional, and it's taking someone through a very specific journey. You want to come out of that experience feeling or knowing something different about yourself, versus it just being that escape. Can you just talk just a little bit about the difference?
If we're using it as a recreational substance and not really putting intention and being mindful of set and setting, or who we're sharing that space with, then it's a very fine line. So we can easily press against the threshold of being a drug and being recreational. Why are you using these substances? Why are you using these compounds? Is it for escape? Is it because you don't want to acknowledge the things that are happening in your life? Are you using them in conjunction with alcohol or in a party scene? Those also have their experiences that can be beneficial in a sense, but it's also not being used as medicine. So oftentimes in this community, in the plant medicine community, you'll see a lot of people using the term quote unquote medicine, and they're really just taking ketamine, or they're taking LSD, or they're taking some type of substance to go into an event or a party where it's not really being used in an intentional set and setting way. But the ego is very tricky. So in that space, we can trick ourselves into saying, oh yes, this is medicine. So that way we feel better about what it is that we're consuming, versus calling it a chicken. And that's okay. The chicken can be the chicken. It can still be a recreational use, but let's be clear about what we are using these compounds for, and being very mindful of those terms of what is drug used for escape, or a medicine which is used with intention and reverence and honor in order to get insight or downloads or information about yourself, or about the greater consciousness of the world, or what we're a part of and what is in existence.
I think for anybody who had a misconception before, and that just totally clarifies.
And are all psychedelics plant medicine?
There's a very large percentage of psychedelics that are plants. So you have the common psychedelics, so psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. You have mescaline, which is peyote or San Pedro, or what's called wachuma, which is a cactus. Ayahuasca, Amazonian vine, and leaf, and a quote-unquote tea. You have 5-MeO-DMT, which is derived from the Bufo alvarius toad of the storm desert. Iboga is an African root and bark of the iboga tree. So when you get into the synthetic versions like ibogaine is actually the psychoactive found in iboga that can be extracted and administered by itself within that molecular structure. And so MDMA and MDA actually originate from the sassafras oil, which is extracted from the sassafras plant itself. LSD, an alkaloid found in ergot, which is a fungus that grows on rye and other grains. Really the one pure synthetic ketamine acts as the psychoactive in small doses. And so we refer to these all as plant medicine, quote unquote, or medicine in general for its medicinal healing properties and neurogenesis effects. And all different psychedelics have their own molecular structure, giving them their own personality, if you will. And so majority of them are derived from an existing plant in itself. Now, the formation of them over the years have changed. Things get adjusted, things get changed, shifted a little bit, but majority of these medicines have derived from plants themselves.
Thank you. And I think leads perfectly to the next question, which is how do they work from a scientific perspective to help you achieve breakthroughs, whether it's physical or emotional?
So Dr. Robin Carhart Harris, who's a psychologist and neuroscientist and head of the Center for Psychedelic Research, Division of Brain Science, Faculty of Medicine at the Imperial College of London. He states that when we take psychedelics, there's an overall enhanced effect of plasticity and describes this plasticity as the capacity for change and that ability to be molded. So studies have shown that a single administration of a psychedelic produces rapid changes in brain plasticity on a molecular, neuronal, synaptic, dendritic level. And so the expression of plasticity related genes and proteins is changing after a single administration of psychedelics. And that's ultimately resulting in changed neuroplasticity, an expansion of the brain, rewiring in a sense. So meaning that after a single administration of a psychedelic, these medicines are directly stimulating neurogenesis and an increasing genetic sequence of genes occurring in the brain for up to a month after treatment. So this is giving us the ability to change, to learn, to unlearn, to adapt differently, promoting increased brain function, providing healing to the psyche, and ultimately changing the currently existing functions of the brain's default mode network. And the default mode network is like the traffic cop determining incoming information to the brain based on previous experiences. So previous pre-programming and default behaviors or default thought patterns. So for example, if I got bit by a German Shepherd as a child, I may have preconceived fear responses and thought patterns about every German Shepherd that I've encountered since that moment. So when a German Shepherd approaches me, I don't even have to think about it. I instinctively start to have a fear response and quickly decide to walk on the other side of the street. This is what's considered the default behavior or thought pattern that exists within us. And so many plant medicines contain a compound called tryptamine, and tryptamine is actually a compound already found in the human brain. The tryptamines disrupt and diminish this normal default mode network activity, causing a functional reset. And so we have these preconceived constructs and beliefs that were imprinted on us as we grew throughout our childhood and continue into adulthood. We all have mothers and fathers, brothers, sisters, the school we attended, the gender and variation of cultures and ethnicities in which we were exposed to, which we are currently exposed to, our teachers, the sports we played or the sports we didn't play, our coaches, the books we read or continue to read. If we were attending college, our professions that we chose to go into, what we watch on TV, who we chose and choose to spend time around, our religious or spiritual beliefs. So all of these factors are contributing to the way in which we think, the way in which we react, the way in which we respond. And it's dating all the way back to when we were in the womb. Your mother experiences a traumatic event during pregnancy. Those high levels of cortisol that she's experiencing start to affect your brain patterns in her belly. Your cellular function as it is in a state of anxiety or fear. It all becomes imprinted within our cells' DNA. And just as we are X% likely to inherit breast cancer or high blood pressure of our grandmothers if they had it, or if our mothers had it, we also carry the genes for all of it. And so some are automatically activated where others aren't activated until later in life. So every aspect of life is imprinting on us in one way or another. And this is why you hear some thought leaders speak about no free will, because we are already coming into this world with preconceived, already written codes within our minds and our bodies, within our computer, if you will, if you think of our psyche and our body as a computer. So each plant medicine experience is like receiving a computer update. It adds upgrades, creating new and enhanced features. The computer is the same, but there's some reprogramming that has happened or occurred. And Michael Pollan, during his book, How to Change Your Mind, he specifically wrote that the myriad of new connections that spring up in the brain during the psychedelic experience, as mapped by the neuroimaging done at Imperial College, and the disintegration of well-traveled old connections may serve simply to shake the snow globe. And so Robert Carhart Harris's phrase, predicate for establishing pathways. Mendel Kaelin, a Dutch postdoc in the Imperial Lab, she proposes a more extended snow metaphor. So thinking of the brain as a hill covered in snow and thoughts as sleds gliding down that hill. As one sled after another goes down the hill, a small number of main trails will appear in the snow. And every time a new sled goes down, it will be drawn into the pre-existing trails, just like a magnet. And those main trails represent the most well-traveled neural connections in your brain, many of them passing through the default mode network. And in time, it becomes more and more difficult to glide down that hill on any other path or in a different direction. So you can think of psychedelics as temporarily flattening. The deeply worn trails start to disappear, and suddenly the sled can go in other directions, exploring new landscapes and literally creating new pathways. When the snow is the freshest, the mind is the most impressionable, and the slightest nudge, whether that be from a song or an intention or a therapist's suggestion, it can powerfully influence its future course in the way in which our current ways of thinking or behaving or reactions are. And so it goes on to say that the therapeutic value of psychedelics, in Carhart Harris's view, lies in their ability to temporarily elevate entropy in the inflexible brain. So it's jolting the system out of these default patterns. And so we know that there are these windows of heightened mental flexibility that open up for us during and after the psychedelic experience, where we become a little bit more malleable, a little bit more shapeable. It's opening windows of new opportunity and really giving us the ability to take advantage of those opportunities.
I love that snow analogy. It really broke it down because, of course, if your brain is functioning the same way over and over again, it is hard to get out of those habits and behaviors. It was really beautiful the way you put that.
Yeah, I also like to think of the mind and the body as a computer. So with every plant medicine experience that you have, it's like you're downloading a new upgrade. You're hitting the restart button and you're getting to upgrade those new programs. And so every time that you restart the computer, there's something that's new, whether that's the mouse is a little different or it works a little bit better, works a little bit differently. And so every single experience that you have is just upgrading that computer system. The computer system within itself stays the same, but it continues to become upgraded.
The analogy is so good. And I'm so glad you highlighted that example. As Karen said, the snow. So good.
These medicine experiences in the journey experience, the medicine itself shapes the snow globe and just allows this new fresh blanket of snow to be laid before you. Now you get to determine the new footsteps that are made in that snow. And that's where you get into the integration talk, which I'm sure we'll get into later. And I think it's also very important to understand that the plant medicines being used are really just one element. And it's really one element that is being introduced into our lives that has the ability to create capacity and change through its information that you receive. So on a neurological level, it is creating neurogenesis, it is creating neuroplasticity and incrementally creating new neurological pathways in our brain to think differently, to behave differently. And it also has the ability to, like I said, the synaptic charges and neurological charges that helps heal my back. So it's happening on an incremental level, but it's also up to you to decide how far you want to take that, what that integration process is, because these journey experiences, they can introduce the information, they can introduce the healing, but in order to have the sustainable healing, the sustainable change, nothing really changes if nothing really changes. So we have to be able to take that information to incorporate it into our day-to-day lives and really start to make those patterns of changes within our own psyche and within our own behaviors. If I were to go into a journey experience with the hopes that I'm going to quit smoking, and I come out of that experience and maybe for a couple of weeks I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, that is really amazing. I don't have the urge, the addictive mindset which I have around it, the addictive patterns of getting into my car and pulling out a cigarette, that's gone. And then after 2 to 3 weeks, it starts to fade a little bit. And then we have some type of trigger that happens in our work or within our family dynamic. And it's extremely stressful, which makes me want a cigarette, which makes me want to smoke. And so I have the opportunity within that moment to say, oh yeah, okay, I'm just going to smoke and restart that pattern. Or I can say no and start to introduce other modalities into my life that can reduce the side effects or symptoms and urges that addictive mindset and property really gave.
That's really helpful. And it leads actually to the next question, which is, what are the most common uses of psychedelics and who are the best candidates for using psychedelics?
So, in my personal opinion, anyone can be a candidate for these medicines. And also in the same breath, those who are interested in experiencing these medicines really need to be aware of not only their capacity to heal, but also their capacity to disrupt. So these default patterns that we're speaking about are deeply entrenched habitual patterns, deeply entrenched behavioral patterns, and thought patterns of both mind and body. So as psychedelics are also catalysts for change, they're also pattern disruptors, which is really helpful to initiate change and again, shaking that snow globe, creating that fresh blanket of snow. So it becomes a little easier to choose a new thought or to make a new choice. And this ultimately leads to a great unlearning or a deconditioning and deprogramming of the mind, of the body, of everything that we have not thought to be known as real or true to our life's experience up until this point. So being exposed to new ways of seeing, thinking, embodying, updating the computer, if you will. So this process, it can be jolting, it can be disorienting, and it can be fragmenting because it is disrupting those patterns. So suddenly you are exposed to a sexual abuse from your father at age 4 that your psyche didn't even remember, which you are now seeing that is linked to all kinds of mistrust that you have in men, or maybe other rooted masculine traits that you've carried throughout your life. And so I cannot stress enough how important it is to really prepare yourself for those possibilities to arise. So who can you talk to if they do? Who can you share your experience with that will be able to guide you? What foundational skills do you have in your tool belt to assist you during and after that experience?
Just on that note, would you say that there's a certain age or there's a maturity level you feel someone needs to be at? So maybe I'm using age as one factor. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think it comes down to the skill set that you have. So the maturity level is extremely important to understanding what's actually happening, because we as adults who have had 40 years, 50 years of experience who dive into a medicine journey, we barely have the skills to understand, to cope, to navigate those experiences while they're happening and afterwards. And so there absolutely has to be that understanding of what you're getting into and the verbal recognition that you're willing to dive into those spaces, because you may approach the dragon's mouth. Are you going to go in it or are you not? And if you're working with somebody who is of a younger age that might not understand some of these experiences and being able to conceptualize them in a way that would be beneficial, it can be re-traumatizing. It can disrupt their ability to maneuver, to think, to move forward in a sense. Again, it can be jolting. But then again, I have come across and had conversations with teenagers who are extremely depressed, who have extreme anxiety, who have severe eating disorders, and they really don't have any other option. And so I have been asked by clients if there are any programs or clinical trials or research that's currently happening with individuals who are below 18. And unfortunately, I haven't come across anything quite yet, because I think the research is really being focused towards specific age groups, specific people with PTSD, anxiety, OCD, depression, and ways in which it can be healing and beneficial for them. So I can see the ways in which it would be beneficial for teens who are really struggling.
And hopefully with more research, I would think that over time that might change, because we're seeing there's so many benefits, if done in the right setting, could be so helpful, which leads to talking about what are the common ways that psychedelics are being used.
Yeah, so common uses, you have MDMA. So the effects of MDMA include anxiety relief, disinhibition, enhanced empathy, sociability skills, relaxation, euphoria. It's classified as an entactogen. So due to how it facilitates feelings of closeness with oneself and others, these researchers describe how American veterans and first responders who suffer from PTSD showed improved conditions after undergoing MDMA-assisted psychotherapy over a substantial period of time. And to speak about, again, the PTSD in which we can have throughout our life. And through my experience, the MDMA experience that I had was so beneficial. And so if you do have somebody with such severe PTSD, it's such a beneficial medicine to be introduced, to slowly enter into that space, to be able to take a step back, be able to perceive it through a different perception, to view it through a completely different lens, and have a guide standing there with you. So that was the first time that your ego has completely shut down. It's met with an open-heartedness. It's met with a little bit more reverence. It's met with a little bit more acceptance, because the MDMA does have that closeness, does have that heart opening, does have that euphoria feeling, which can really help with those severe traumatic experiences that we have. So it can be a great initiator of a medicine for many people. You have ketamine, which assists with depression, anxiety. At high doses, it's an anesthetic, so it's used in operating rooms. And at lower doses, it's considered a sub-anesthetic. So they have positive and short-lived effects. And you'll see different ketamine clinics that are popping up throughout the country. It's becoming extremely popular. They will meet with a clinician. They will go through an interview process, fill out a form, be able to list their cognitive skills, where they're at mentally, where they're at physically, where they're at medically. So a clinician will work with them in this intake form. What medications are you on? And then they will start to put you on a regimen protocol alongside with the assisted talk therapy. So they take you through the experience from beginning to end and really start to pay attention to, again, the mental capacity you have, your physical health, your emotional health, all of the coping skills in which you have, and watching the progression of that as you go through this regimented protocol with them. Psilocybin is a current potential for many therapeutic windows of psilocybin assisted therapy. So alcohol dependence, stimulant dependence, post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, cancer-related depression, suicidal ideations, chronic pain. A lot of people have what's called cluster suicide headaches, where it's just constant migraines over and over again, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, epilepsy, psychopathy. And so psilocybin actually has a large range of benefits which can be provided into that therapeutic space. They're currently still doing tests with that in the clinical setting, but they're noticing so many healing benefits from that on such a wide range of psychosis or health issues that exist. We're seeing this enormous spike in interest in psychedelics over the past 10 years, just due to the recent wave of the psychedelic research that's showing all the potent substances that have a wide range of therapeutic effects, psychospiritual benefits, and helping to catalyze meaningful change in our lives. And so you'll start to see maps with the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They are really doing an incredible job of exposing the world to MDMA assisted therapy and ketamine assisted therapy. Now, these are both synthetic molecules that are able to easily be administered. They're able to be easily researched. The data that's collected on them is very consistent versus psilocybin, versus mescaline, or even ayahuasca, where you have an entire range of experiences that can happen within those medicines. Ketamine, you know what you're going to get in response to data collection. MDMA, you know what you're going to get in response to data collection. So if you take a cookie cutter person with PTSD or depression or anxiety, and their age and their health status and physical health status, mental health status, the data that's collected from that is extremely easy for the clinician and to regimen, to guide. Whereas some of these other plant medicines, it's the roll of the dice that's going to show up.
I wanted to ask is if you could just briefly talk about microdosing versus macrodosing.
Yeah. Within the experiences, there's the micro and macro scale. So the microdosing being very small amounts of the psychedelic that is assisting with the incremental shifts in the neuroplasticity. So it's helping to treat the depression or anxiety on a daily basis or also multiple times per week. So it's a very small amount in which you are administering or ingesting on a weekly basis compared to the macro dosing, which consuming very large amounts of the psychedelic that put you in an expanded, altered state of consciousness. So the frequency of these experiences, that will be determined by the person. It's not on a daily basis when you're doing the macro dosing. It's really determined on the person, their integration process, their health status, mental status, coping skills.
Would you say microdosing is being used more as an everyday type of aid rather than the more profound experience that's going to introduce you to another part of yourself or help you release something with the macrodosing.
Correct. So the microdosing is really introducing that on a daily basis or multiple times per week. And you'll see a lot of people who are on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications or other medications. And one beautiful aspect of microdosing is being able to work in conjunction with the current prescription meds that you're on and getting that reduced on an incremental basis. Now, I'm not a physician nor am I a doctor in order to be able to prescribe people a regimen that would work for them in conjunction with their current antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds. But after a while, you can start to play with that. So if you have a physician or know somebody who believes in these plant medicines and the benefits and the healing benefits in which they have, then you can start to really fluctuate and adjust the current scripts that you're on in order to slowly reduce that. And what would it feel like? Who am I? A lot of my clients have no idea who they are without these medications. They have no idea what it's like to feel. They have no idea what it's like to not have brain fog. And it's fascinating to me to be able to watch them go through their process of understanding, especially when they're introducing the microdosing to them. You'll see more of a focused microdose would be LSD in small doses, psilocybin, San Pedro, even microdose ayahuasca capi vine, and they all have their different modalities. They all have their different properties and molecular structure that has their own personality and different benefits. And it's really about creating a relationship with that. So having that intention that's being set before you do the microdose, because sometimes when you're microdosing psilocybin and you have high anxiety, it can really be a mirror for you to experience the depth of that anxiety. And so those experiences can happen. We have such incredible intelligence to give you the experience that you need for your healing and that is of benefit to you. And so it has this entire umbrella of various effects that can happen. So you introduce it into your day-to-day for 8 weeks, and there's different microdosing protocols that you can find online too through Paul Stamets or Laura Dawn's website, who's really amazing. And you really create an intention throughout the 8 weeks. What's it that you desire? What's it that you want to learn and that you want to know? And you start to create a relationship, say it is with the psilocybin. And throughout that 8 weeks, then you can start to cross compare where you're at if you have reduced medications that you're on and what it's like to feel in that space. Can you start to remove some certain things from your diet or your med list or different things in your physical environment that are aiding you or being of benefit to you? And so you can really start to adjust and on this very incredible incremental path versus a macro experience, which can be very in your face, very explosive in a sense.
Just learning so much about even in the tone of the way that you speak of these plant medicines overall, about the care, the intelligence that they have to bring you to your real self. And those of us who are studying spirituality know any kind of disease is showing up because it's something inside of your soul potentially. And so it just feels so uplifting to hear you say that these medicines can get you to that place of really taking that step back, of getting rid of that snow trail and remembering who you really are at your essence and seeing that maybe even for the first time. That visual that you gave us about your experience of really loving yourself for the first time. It sounds extreme, but it's in essence who you came in to be, to remember, to express. And it's just such a beautiful thought that this experience can get you at least to remember that and then maybe even work your way back to that.
Speaking of that and talking about intentional journeys, can you talk a little bit more about if someone were to decide that they want to have an intentional journey, how they go about that, and then talk about the integration that also should be a part of it so that it can be real transformative experience for them?
Yeah, if somebody is interested in working with psychedelics or plant-based medicine in a intentional set and setting, there are so many offerings that are out there. Now, you can go through clinical research or trials and apply for that to see if it's something that you can be a part of. And there are also underground experiences in which you can find. It is extremely important to trust the person in which you are allowing create that container and hold that space for you. You are in an extremely susceptible, raw, vulnerable space. And unfortunately, there are people out there who take advantage of that. And you even see this happening in some of the South American countries with ayahuasca, because it's now become this really big star in the sky in which people are now raising eyebrows and asking questions about. And so you have somebody Google ayahuasca retreats in Brazil, and there's 40 different retreats. How do you know which one to go to? Some of those shamans who are over there are not in the best integrity. They're not with the best intentions. They want monetary exchange. And so to think that everybody in the plant medicine path are extremely beautiful space holders and that they care about your health and well-being, it's to be blind. And just as in any aspect of life, there is the polarity of that. You do have the people who truly care, who are able to hold you intentionally in that space. And then you do have the people who believe that they can, or are doing it out of integrity and with a completely different intent. And so it's really important for you to ask questions, for you to receive a recommendation from someone that you know has gone and experienced this retreat, or has gone and experienced this space holder, this medicine keeper. So that way you can go into that experience already knowing that this person that you spoke to received a beautiful, healing, safe container for you to have the experience that you're meant to have in the capacity in which you're meant to have it, because you are in such a vulnerable space in that container that it is very impressionable, extremely impressionable. So it's really important to be able to vet your shaman, to be able to vet your space holder and ask questions, talk to people, get on Reddit. There are people in the ketamine clinics as well who have gone to different retreats or having different experiences, or even sending myself an email and asking, I would love to do X, Y, and Z. What are your recommendations? And having some guidance within that. So that way you are being safe, you are being mindful, because if you are feeling safe in that space, you are not going to have the experience that you're meant to have and the healing that you're meant to experience, because your mind is completely attached to the unsafe that is being created.
And then can you talk about the role of an integration specialist, and how do you refer to yourself?
Integration specialist. I reside in the house of healing and transformation, helping people refine themselves. But your integration process is completely up to you and how far down that rabbit hole you want to go. An analogy that I often use is some people like to lay out next to the pool. Other people like to float on a raft on the surface pool. And then others like to dive in, swim to the bottom, lift the filter, and go all the way down the drain. So the depth of your integration is completely up to you. Yes, these medicines are creating changes on a neurological level. However, they are not the shiny red pill that changes all. They are exposing you to new realities and new potentials, new possibilities, exposing what needs to be healed and what needs to be addressed in your life. So to think that 40 years of life can be rewired and changed within 5 hours is to be blind to the work that is required outside of us. And these plant medicines are really only one element to assist us with that work. It does not do the work for us. And it's ultimately up to you to acknowledge the experience, the information you received, and to try to understand how you interweave that information throughout your day-to-day to create new thought patterns and new behavioral patterns. So there's so much profound wisdom of these plant teachers, and they offer so much clarity and insight and amplifying our self-awareness to reorient what we really care about in our lives. And our plant teachers, they can really illuminate the path before our feet, but they can't make you walk it.
100%.
For anybody who has any kind of misperception of what plant medicine is, I think that your description was just so right on target, because it is one modality that can be very powerful, but it's just a door that you have to walk through and continue, like you just said, on that path to integration.
And how long would you say you typically work with somebody after they've had one of these experiences?
I've worked with people for a few months, and I've also worked with people for a year and a half. And so it really depends on where you're at, what skills you have, how far you're willing to go, your trauma, your history, your belief patterns that exist. Ultimately, it really depends on the person. And again, how far down that rabbit hole you want to go.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with just saying, okay, I quit smoking? Or do you want to go a little bit further and understand all the other addictive properties that are stemming towards that one thing? Or maybe it leads you into a completely different experience, whether that would be a past trauma or whether that would be experiencing God. So Bufo alvaria, it's a beautiful medicine, and the capacity for it. So you look at ayahuasca, which is between a 6 to 8 hour experience. And then you have psilocybin, which is between a 4 to 6 hour experience. And then you have Bufo alvarius, which is the 5-MeO DMT, which is really around a 30 to 40-minute experience. And that is because when you smoke, it's a secretion from the Bufo alvarius toad. And so they crystallize that and you smoke it. And when you smoke it, you are launched into Christ consciousness within a matter of seconds. And our mind and body, physically and energetically and emotionally, can't sustain or withhold that intensity, that experience for 4 to 8 hours. It just can't. It's too big. And so with that experience, it can be jolting. It can be completely jolting and disorienting. You can come out of those experiences really fragmented. You can start to question everything in your reality. Everything that you had ever thought to be true has now changed because you are now just in the essence of Christ consciousness and with God. And so the amount of integration, it's really tailored to each person. I am still integrating my first experience from 2018, from the experience that I've shared. So I'm continue 4 years later, I continue to receive different understandings and different information because I'm able to see. It showed me my ex-partner walking on a tightrope towards the light. And at that moment, I was like, oh, okay, so he's just balancing a lot. So he's just balancing in life. And so now when I look at that, I have an entirely different perspective, an entirely different viewpoint. The lens has completely widened and I'm able to go, oh, I understand. This affects X, this affects Y, this affects Z. You're forever integrating these experiences. They don't go away. I've had people who they've only had one psychedelic experience. That was enough. And then I've had people who are complete psychonauts who go and do 22 ayahuasca ceremonies in 2 years.
No way. Wow.
Wow. Torrie, I just want to ask, the healer, which you are, which you have become through your journey, what does it mean to you to do this work? I can see you closing your eyes and just savoring the question. So tell us.
It's a really beautiful question. It's being able to watch somebody and witness their experience unfold and be able to have these beautiful aha moments when they understand an aspect of themselves or they find themselves for the first time. And when you say healer, I don't consider myself a healer. I consider myself to be in the healing space, in the space of the house of healing and transformation, because all I'm really doing is providing a safe space for you to be able to have that experience that you're meant to have in the capacity that you're meant to have it. And whether that's through talk therapy or body work or breath work and meditation, being able to assist you and watching you go through the movie reel of your own mind to have these greater understandings of self, these greater understandings of what you're part of, and the amount of capacity of healing that exists within it. It's extremely beautiful to just witness. And it doesn't place judgment or opinions or their own personal experience on the experience of life that you're having, because that might be the only time in their life in which they have ever actually been heard, in which they actually have ever felt like themselves and what they're experiencing and what they're processing is real. And so it's this magical community of people that gets to be created, that you get to see just inspire one another and find themselves in each other, finding themselves within themselves. And we think that we're meant to be in this space and we're supposed to do it all alone. And a lot of what ayahuasca has taught me over the last couple of years is the impact and the power of group healing. And so it's being able to truly witness. Sometimes I'm just a sounding board. Sometimes I'm like, okay, you're feeling anxiety. Let's go through this mantra. Let's go through this meditation. Let's go through this breathwork practice and see how that shifts and changes. Let's acknowledge what the body's currently experiencing. And then let's go through a meditation or breathwork practice or somatic experience that is allowing you to notice the shifts and the changes from that heightened state of sympathetic nervous system response to a parasympathetic nervous system response. And all I did was just prompt you. You did the work. You got yourself there and you're capable of doing this. And so it's a really beautiful, powerful, mystical, angelic space in which I just get to witness all these amazing, incredible transformations in people.
Well, and you're having your own as well. I think so much of this comes from you walking the walk, and you also also having these experiences and then integrating them and continuing to integrate, as you said, and you're doing that work so that you can be the Torrie that you are meant to be. So you are helping others be the souls that they're meant to be and live the lives they're supposed to live in this lifetime. That is such a gift.
I don't know how I got so lucky to be in this space. It literally takes my breath away. And so it's just an incredible, I don't know how I got so fortunate, but I did. And I'm so, so blessed and so appreciative. You guys, the amount of magic that I get to see on a day-to-day basis is bananas.
Who gets to describe their day job that way?
Yeah, I feel that from you. I feel that from you. And I know we're so grateful to have been connected to you and for you to take the time and share all of this wisdom in a space that I know that Karen and I talk about all the time, that feels like you don't know who to trust when it comes to understanding and really laying things out. And we were led to you, no doubt, divinely, so that you could share this wisdom that you've acquired and through your experiences and through your work with everybody listening today, and hopefully inspiring people to research more, potentially reach out to you, and or looking for other trusted resources in order to potentially experiencing one of these plant medicines so that they themselves can have their own transformation. So thank you.
Thank you. It's an amazing opportunity.
I just feel like you radiate this joy. I wish everybody could see you. It's so inspiring.
What is the best way for someone who might have other questions or potentially would want to work with you or someone that you recommend? How should they contact you?
So they can just go to the Satori review and my email address is listed there. And so the website is being developed, but we will go ahead and include a portion on there. So that way any questions that somebody might have, they can reach out directly through there. I can also give my email address for the satoritribute.com. So that way it goes straight into that inbox and we can start guiding and answering any questions.
Wonderful. And for everyone listening, just to spell that out for you, it is satoritribu.com. And we'll have the website listed in our show notes. So for anyone listening, you can go there and you can find the information and reach out to Torrie from there. Thank you so much, Torrie.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we're only scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And how powerful is it?
It's so true.
When women are uniting, we're bringing all this information forward and exposing our truth and our stories. We need our eyes to see. We need our ears to hear. We need our voices to tell our stories because they are so important for other people to recognize and understand in order to start asking questions and to really dive deeper into the sense of self, in order to dive deeper into that soul growth or spiritual aspect and essence in which we are so removed from. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.